Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me. I've got another book review, book recommendation for you today, and it is called Stop Worrying, Start Writing by Sarah Painter. So it's a non-fiction book, and I came across this author, Sarah Painter, on Twitter, and she had this podcast where she was interviewing another author called Rachel Burton, and I had just read Rachel's book and listened to the podcast, and it was great and really interesting chat. And also I just thought Sarah Painter's voice was lovely. It was so soothing and calming, and I looked up her books on Audible, and she had 5 or 6 books on there, most of which were fiction, and then this one non-fiction book. And so I thought I would get started with that one, and I really enjoyed it, and it links very closely to the other book that I've been talking about on this channel, The Artist's Way. She talks about a lot of techniques that that I've come across on The Artist's Way as well, which are really, really helpful, especially for people like me who are worried and can be full of fear and anxious about things. So she gave lots of tips, and I made a few notes because I knew I wouldn't remember everything. So if I'm looking down at my page, that's why I'm referring to the wee things I've scribbled. She talks about a lot of things, such as, writing first thing in the morning, so that you can get your allotted words down and then enjoy the rest of the day. And I definitely do that. I find I write better in the morning. And I was actually chatting to somebody about this yesterday on Instagram, and she was saying that she's not a morning person, and that she sort of would more prefer late afternoon, and that's fine. It's different for everyone, and it's just about finding your own routine that suits you. But I personally prefer to write in the morning. I get up, get a coffee, give myself a bit of time to wake up, and then I would rather just get stuck into the writing and do it. And I concentrate better in the morning. I have more energy in the morning, and then also when it's done, then I can kind of relax and enjoy the rest of the day and not have it hanging over my head all day thinking, I'll have to get some writing done today. I can just relax. Then she talks about whenever you're reading books, to take notes. So some of these bits of advice she gave, I was really pleased because I'm already doing some of these things. So when I read books, I'll keep a notepad at my side, and I'll make notes about what I like or didn't like about the book, or what I think works or didn't work. So for example, if I'm not warming to the main character, then I'll make a note about that, because I can't follow the story if I'm not having sympathy for the main character. Or if I don't know, if think it's really interesting, the hook that the author used, or the twist that she threw in, or whatever the case may be, I'll make notes and learn from each book. And it's funny because if you think about a fiction book where you have sympathy for the main character, although this is a non-fiction book, I had sympathy for Sarah Painter as though she was the main character, because she would have spoken very honestly about having years of rejection, or having days where she felt completely defeated, but then she was able to pull through it, and she's had all these books published, and now she's working as a full-time author and stuff. So I kind of had sympathy for her, and I was rooting for her, and I enjoyed that about this book. She also talks about developing a habit of writing. So if you think when you're, say, learning to drive or learning to type, or you've got a new phone, you're kind of all fingers and thumbs, and then after a while it just becomes like habit. And it's the same with writing. It'll seem a bit strange to kind of get up a bit earlier, or set aside a certain amount of word limit that you want to reach that day, but then after a while it becomes habit. The other thing that she spoke about, which I really identified with, and which is talked about in The Artist's Way, is she'll talk about a blue dragon being on your shoulder, whereas in The Artist's Way would talk about a sensor being on your shoulder, and it's that voice of fear that will be on your shoulder, which, you know, has been on my shoulder since the first day that I started writing and is still there, but I've just learned how to ignore it now. So and she'll talk about sitting down to write and telling herself lies, and I do that all the time. Like I'll sit down to write and I'll tell myself this is only a draft, which is true, it is only a draft, but I'll tell myself it's only a draft and it doesn't have to be perfect, and I can go back and edit it. And you tell yourself all these little things to take the pressure off writing, because if you were to sit down and start writing and tell yourself, right, this has to be brilliant, and I want this to be a really great piece of writing, and I want this to get published, and you would just put yourself under so much pressure that you would never write a word. So she talks a lot about that, about telling yourself little lies and ignoring all the little anxiety thoughts that will be running around in your head. And she just goes into so many things. I actually, when I was listening to this book, there was so much that, and I got so engrossed in it, I just forgot to take notes because I was just enjoying listening to it. But I think it's the type of book that I will go back to again and again, and listen to and sort of dip in and out of it the same way that I do with The Artist's Way. If I'm needing a bit of motivation with my writing, I will dip into books like this to kind of spur me on, She talks a lot about a fallow period where you might not be doing any writing at all. And I really identified with that. I've had times where months where I haven't done any writing at all. And I had a time where I was suffering from really bad depression, and the last thing I wanted to do was write. And I didn't fret about it. I just sort of thought, well, it'll come back eventually, and and it did. And now the things that happened during that period, I'm now using. I suppose they're now going into my writing. So everything that you're experiencing will sort of be used eventually. It all kind of goes in subconsciously, and even though you're not diligently writing every day, you're mulling things over and you're thinking about stuff, and it's always there in the background. So she talks a lot about that as well, about that sort of fallow period and not to freak out. And it's just it's kind of like a really comforting book, because she's kind of been through it and she's come out the other side, and so I think I'm going to wrap this up. I don't want to go on too long, and at the end of the book, she gives lots of recommendations for other books as well, which I will look into. But yeah, it's definitely a book that's worth checking out. Regardless of what stage you're at with your writing, I think it would be very, very beneficial for anyone who is currently writing or thinking about writing. So that is all from me. Thank you for watching. If you want to see any other videos like this, please do subscribe and like and leave a wee comment. And that's all from me. Thanks for watching. Bye.